So the motivation to put together Things My Father Taught Me was a really personal one. It comes from my personal experience with my own father and also my life as an adopted person, where I also went looking for my birth father to find out where I really came from. And so in one of the chapters of Things My Father Taught Me, I share that story about reuniting with my dad and the difficulties and the challenges and the happiness that that brought into my life. And so after thinking about my own relationship with my dad, I started thinking about other relationships that people have with their fathers. And as a journalist and somebody who loves interviewing people and hearing real stories, I thought of the idea of asking other people about their relationships with their dads. And so I've approached a number of well-known identities, people from TV and radio and business, and just asking them about the impact and the influence that their dad had on their lives. I invited a whole range of people to be interviewed for this project, and part of the reasons behind interviewing the people I did was because I knew that they had really interesting relationships with their fathers. And by interesting, that doesn't always mean 100% happy, because the reality is that we don't always have perfect relationships with our dads. And what makes this book so interesting is that people were really happy to tell the real story and be honest and share some really personal aspects of their relationship with their dad, which sometimes wasn't always perfect. I interviewed a lot of men for the book, but I interviewed some women as well, and it was also really interesting to see the difference that women have as daughters to their fathers as opposed to sons with their dads. It's a completely different relationship. One woman that I interviewed was Em Rusciano, who's a really well-known breakfast host and musician, and she has just an incredibly close relationship with her dad. Really, really respects him, really loves him, and they play in a band together. So it was really fun hearing about their relationship. So some of the people I interviewed include Anne Peacock, whose father was Andrew Peacock of the Liberal Party, Neil Mitchell from radio station 3AW in Melbourne, David Koch from Sunrise, the breakfast host of that show, and he has just an incredible respect for his dad, who has since passed away. And he spoke so lovingly about his father, and family for him is just one of the most important things in his life. And that attachment to family is something that came from just having a really stable, secure childhood and just a complete admiration of his own father. And they're qualities that he's really tried to put in his own family. And even a few years ago, David was nominated and won Father of the Year. And so he really put that down to just the incredibly secure childhood he had and the role model that his own dad provided for him. In some people's lives, the dad can be a real figure of fear and a figure of authority. And for some people, dads just become a really close friend. And it was really great to hear all the different stories and see the completely different facets of that father and child relationship. One that stands out for me was the singer Anthony Callea, who some of you may know. He came out as gay and did that in the public eye as a singer, having been on Australian Idol. But he spoke to me about actually the moment that he had to come out to his parents, and just the love and support that his father gave him was so pivotal to the way he went on from there. And it was really great to hear about a relationship that was so loving, when he himself says in the book that there's other people, other adult males that he knows that still can't even reveal that to their parents. They can't come out and simply just tell their mum and dad that they're gay. But when Anthony did it with his own father, it just made such a huge difference in his life, that his dad was just so incredibly supportive and accepting of who he was, and nothing changed between them as father and son. Their relationship probably just got deeper. So in the case of Matthew Reilly, it was really interesting to hear him talk about his dad, who he describes as a really humble man. Matthew himself has had incredible success as a blockbuster author, and he's now living in America. But he puts his approach to his success down to really the lessons that his dad taught him, which is just this complete humility and this tendency to not show off and just be a decent person. And that's what he thinks has helped him sort of stay level-headed with the fame that he's had, and just stay focused on writing rather than get sort of sucked into the whole idea of being such a popular author. Being an adopted person, I had two dads, and so at some point in my life, when I was in my late teens, I really wanted to find out who my real family was, and that led me to finding out who my birth father was and eventually meeting him a couple of times. And so I write about that in the book. In my dad's case, I discovered a man who had a really long history with depression, who'd been diagnosed as bipolar. And it was really confronting for me finding out that information, not feeling connected to that illness in any way, and suddenly finding out that it was such a direct link in my family. And so I talk about that in the book, and what it really means to find out your heritage and the impact that it has on you, because nature versus nurture is something I think about a lot as an adopted person. And it's a question I asked of the interviewees in my book, whether they felt they were the person they are today just because of their genetics or because what they actually learned from their dads. And so it was really interesting to hear all the different takes on that and people's opinions.